The train tracks behind the small coastal town hummed like a restless heartbeat, carrying dreams away every morning. Lena stood on the station platform, clutching a small, faded suitcase one her mother had once owned, and tried to hide the tremble in her hands. The air smelled of diesel, salt, and something faintly metallic, the scent of departure. Around her, men and women in wrinkled clothes shouted last goodbyes, children waved frantically, and vendors called out, selling tea in tiny plastic cups. But Lena barely heard any of it. Her heart was somewhere between fear and hope. For months, she had been waiting for this day, the day she would finally leave home. Not to escape, but to build something better. To earn enough money to lift her family out of the endless cycle of debt and hunger. Her father had been a fisherman, a quiet man with rough hands and tired eyes. The sea had claimed him one night during a storm when she was only 16. Since then, Lena had learned that grief didn't drown you instantly, it pulled you under slowly, wave by wave. Her mother had grown weaker after his death, her health declining with every unpaid medical bill. And Lena's younger brother, Amir, only 11, had dreams far too big for the family's means. He wanted to be a teacher, a real one, not just someone who helped kids under a streetlight after work. That's why Lena was leaving. When the man came to their town a month earlier, dressed in clean clothes and holding glossy brochures, he had seemed like a miracle. He spoke softly, promising good pay, free housing, and a legal contract. A waitressing job, he had said, in a new restaurant opening overseas. You'll earn in dollars, you'll send money home every month, you'll change your family's life. Her mother had hesitated. But she's never even been to the city, sir. How will she go abroad? The man smiled. Don't worry, madam. We arrange everything. We help women like your daughter all the time. It's a respectable job, safe and clean. He had even shown them pictures, young women in uniforms, smiling, serving food at a hotel. The promise had felt like sunlight after years of rain. Lena sold her mother's gold bangles, the last relics of happier times, to pay for the processing fees. She didn't tell Amir how much it cost her. She didn't tell anyone that she'd overheard 2 other women whispering that the man took girls to bars, not restaurants. She didn't want to believe it. People in her town always gossiped about those who left, calling them foolish or worse. But Lena couldn't afford doubt. She had no one else to turn to, no other chance at changing her life. So she signed. And now, standing at the station, she took a deep breath and repeated what her mother had told her that morning. Courage isn't about not being scared, Beta. It's about doing what's right even when your legs shake. The whistle blew. The train arrived with a screech, metal grinding against metal. Lena climbed aboard, her heart pounding. She watched her mother grow smaller through the window, her sari fluttering in the wind, one hand raised in a trembling wave. Beside her, Amir shouted, "Bring me books, Dee, promise." Lena smiled through her tears. "I promise," she mouthed. As the train moved, she pressed her forehead against the glass, staring at the blur of fields and houses flashing by. She imagined herself in a crisp uniform, balancing plates with ease, earning enough to buy medicine for her mother and notebooks for Amir. It was a beautiful dream, fragile, shimmering, and full of hope. But somewhere deep inside her, a quiet unease stirred. Something about the man's last words before she boarded kept echoing in her mind. "You're a smart girl," he had said, smiling too widely. "Just do as you're told and you'll be fine." By the time Lena reached the capital, the world had already started to feel different. The airport was a maze of lights, noise, and people rushing in every direction. Her recruiter, Mr. Malik, met her outside with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He collected her passport for visa stamping, he said. He handed her a small paper envelope with her travel documents and told her to wait. Hours later, she was herded into a small group of 6 women. Most of them were from villages like hers, young, nervous, clutching their bags like shields. They boarded a flight under the name of a catering company none of them had heard of. When the plane lifted off, Lena felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. She'd never been on a plane before. The view of clouds below was breathtaking, but her heart felt heavy. She thought of Amir's smile, her mother's fragile hands, and the promise of a better tomorrow. She didn't know that the tomorrow waiting for her was nothing like the one she had imagined. When she arrived at her destination, a humid city crowded with high rises and narrow alleys, the first thing she noticed was the heat. It pressed against her skin like a warning. Mr. Malik was replaced by another man, taller, with sunglasses and a thick accent. He didn't introduce himself. He just said, "Follow." The women were loaded into a van with tinted windows. Lena tried to look outside, but everything passed in blurs, streets, people, flashing signs in a language she didn't understand. After what felt like an hour, the van stopped. The man turned around. "This is where you'll stay," he said. It wasn't a hotel. It wasn't even near a restaurant. It was a 2-story building with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered weakly. "Moonlight Bar." Lena frowned. "Sir, isn't this the staff accommodation?" The man smirked. "This is where you'll work. Inside." Her stomach dropped. The air suddenly felt too thin. "There must be a mistake," she stammered. "I was told I'd be a waitress." "You serve here," he interrupted sharply. "You smile. You make the guests happy. That's your job." He tossed a folded outfit at her, a short sequined dress, and walked away. The other women exchanged horrified looks. One of them began to cry quietly. Lena stood frozen, her mind spinning. This wasn't what she had signed up for. This wasn't what she'd dreamed of. She thought of her mother's weak voice on the phone, her brother's laughter, the promise she'd made to bring books and money home. She couldn't go back now. She had no passport, no money, no one to call. For the first time, Lena felt the full weight of her choice pressing down on her. She was trapped not in a bar, but in a lie that had stolen her freedom. And yet, somewhere inside her, a small voice whispered, "Survive. For them." She didn't know how, but she knew she had to. Because somewhere far away, a mother waited for medicine, and a little boy waited for books. And Lena would do whatever it took, even if it meant dancing in the dark to keep her promise. The first night at Moonlight Bar was something Lena would never forget, not because of what happened, but because of what she felt. It wasn't fear alone. It was disbelief, confusion, and a desperate refusal to accept the world she had suddenly fallen into. The room smelled of alcohol and perfume, a suffocating mix that clung to her clothes. Colored lights flashed across the mirrored walls. Laughter echoed loud, hollow, and heavy. Lena stood behind a curtain, the sequined dress scratching her skin, her hair tied up tightly by one of the older women. Around her, others were fixing makeup, adjusting heels, forcing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. One of them, a tall woman with tired eyes and a soft accent, noticed Lena's trembling hands. "First time?" she asked gently. Lena nodded, unable to speak. The woman sighed. "Don't fight it tonight, just get through it. That's how we all start." "What is this place?" Lena whispered. "A cage with lights," the woman said bitterly. "We all came here thinking we'd be waitresses, receptionists, singers, whatever lie they told us, but this is what we got." Before Lena could respond, a man with a clipboard barked orders from outside. "Everyone on stage, now." The women moved, their bodies mechanical. Lena followed them, her heart hammering. When she stepped onto the stage, the lights blinded her. The music thumped in her chest, the crowd's voices blending into a blur. "Just smile," someone hissed from behind her. So she did. She smiled, a broken practice smile that hurt more than anything else. That night blurred into the next, and the next after that. Days had no meaning, nights were endless. The girls were given food, a shared room, and barely enough pay to cover their debts, the cost of their visas, tickets, and training. The owners claimed they owed thousands. Every week, Lena asked for her passport back. Every week, the manager said the same thing: "Work a little longer, and you'll get it. You're doing fine." But she wasn't fine. Inside, she was breaking. In the first few days, she barely spoke. She followed orders, served drinks, endured the stares, the comments, the occasional unwanted hand on her arm. At night, She cried quietly into her pillow, careful not to wake the others. She missed the sound of the sea back home, the smell of her mother's cooking, her brother's laughter. She missed being herself. But even in that darkness, small acts of rebellion began to take root. She saved every tip, no matter how small. When the manager wasn't looking, she slipped coins into a small pouch she kept hidden in her pillow. It wasn't much, but it was hers. And every night, before she went to sleep, she whispered to herself, "This is not forever." One evening, a customer, an older man, with kind eyes asked where she was from. When she told him, he frowned. "You're too young for this," he said quietly. "You shouldn't be here." She forced a smile. "None of us should." He nodded, then slipped a folded note under his glass. When she opened it later, she found not money, but a phone number and a line that read, "If you need help, call this." Lena stared at it for a long time that night. She wanted to call, but fear held her back. What if it was a trap? What if they found out? So she kept it hidden, tucked inside her shoe, the same way she kept hope. Out of sight, but never out of reach. As weeks turned into months, Lena began to notice things. There was a rhythm to the bar, a hierarchy. The older women protected the younger ones. The staff who'd been there longest knew how to avoid the worst clients, how to negotiate quietly, how to survive. And then there was Mira. Mira was different. She had been there for 3 years but carried herself with quiet authority. She was the one who comforted new arrivals, the one who spoke calmly to the manager when things got rough, the one who always seemed to have a plan. One night, after the bar closed, Mira found Lena sitting alone by the window, staring at the city lights. "You're still counting the days, aren't you?" Mira asked. Lena nodded. "I just want to go home." Mira lit a cigarette and exhaled slowly. "We all did. Some of us still do. But you can't just wait, Lena. Waiting doesn't change anything. What else can I do? Think, watch, save, plan." Her tone was firm but kind. "The only way out is to be smarter than the ones who trapped you." Lena looked at her, unsure what to say. Mira smiled faintly. "And stop crying into your pillow. It doesn't help. Cry here." She tapped her chest. "Cry here and turn it into strength." That night, Lena didn't cry. Instead, she lay awake, replaying Mira's words. The next morning, she began paying attention to faces, to patterns, to who came in and out of the bar. She learned which staff member handled payments. She learned where the manager kept the girls' passports, a locked drawer in his office. She learned that the bar's owner visited only once a week, always on Fridays, always in a black car with tinted windows. Knowledge became her quiet rebellion. Despite everything, Lena never stopped sending money home. The first time she did, she stood in line for hours at a money transfer office, trembling as she filled out the form. When the clerk asked for her ID, she handed over a photocopy of her passport, the only thing she had. The man glanced at her suspiciously but processed it anyway. When the receipt was printed, Lena's hands shook. For the first time since she arrived, she felt a flicker of power, however small. That night, she dreamed of her brother opening a new notebook, her mother smiling faintly as she held a bag of groceries. It wasn't much, but it was something good born from all the bad. And that, for now, was enough to keep her going. Weeks later, a new girl arrived. She couldn't have been more than 19. Scared, lost, just like Lena had been. Lena took her aside, offered her water, and said, "Don't trust anyone who smiles too much. Keep your money hidden, and don't stop dreaming, not even here." The girl blinked, confused. "Dreaming?" Lena smiled softly. "That's what keeps us alive." The bar continued to roar with music and laughter, but inside Lena, something was changing. She was no longer just enduring. She was observing, adapting, thinking. Mira noticed it too. "Good," she said one night. "You're learning to survive." Lena shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I'm learning to escape." Mira's smile faded slightly. "Then be careful. The walls here aren't just made of bricks, they're made of people. And people talk." But the fire inside Lena wouldn't go out. Every night she danced, every time she smiled through tears, she reminded herself, I am not in this place. I am not what they say I am. I'm just passing through. She didn't know how long it would take, but she knew one thing for sure: the girl who had arrived scared and naive was gone. In her place stood someone harder, wiser, and stronger, a woman who could see through the glitter to the cruelty underneath. And though she was still trapped, for the first time, Lena began to believe she might one day walk free, not because someone would save her, but because she would save herself. Lena had learned to wear two faces, one for the world, one for herself. The one the world saw was graceful, obedient, smiling under the colored lights of Moonlight Bar. The one she hid was watchful, angry, alive. For months, she had studied the bar's rhythms: when the manager left, when the guards drank, when the staff changed shifts. Her small pouch of saved coins had grown heavier, her resolve stronger. But freedom still felt far away until the night everything changed. It began with a fight. One of the girls, Amara, a quiet woman from the Philippines, had been caught trying to hide her tips. The manager dragged her into his office and slammed the door. The music kept playing, but everyone knew what was happening inside. When Amara came out, her cheek was bruised, her eyes empty. Lena watched, fists clenched. Something inside her broke that night. Not from fear, from fury. Later, when the crowd was gone, Lena went to her, offering a cloth for her face. Amara shook her head. Don't. It'll just make it worse. Lena whispered, We can't keep living like this. Amara laughed bitterly. You think we have a choice? Lena hesitated. Maybe not yet, but one day we will. Amara looked at her tired, hopeless, and said, Hope is dangerous here. But Lena wasn't ready to let go of it. A few days later, Mira called her over after closing. Walk with me, she said quietly. They stepped into the narrow alley behind the bar, where the city's neon faded into shadow. Mira leaned against the wall, lighting a cigarette. You've been asking too many questions, Lena, the manager noticed. Lena froze. I just want to go home. Mira exhaled smoke. I know, we all do. But you can't show it. You can't make them think you're planning anything. That's how girls disappear. Disappear? Mira's eyes softened with something close to sorrow. You don't want to know. For the first time, Lena saw fear flicker in Mira's face. It wasn't just the fear of punishment, it was the fear of being broken completely. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She thought of Amara's bruised face, Mira's warning, the phone number still hidden in her shoe. What if that number was her only chance? Before dawn, while the others slept, Lena quietly took it out. The paper had faded from sweat, the ink smudged, but the number was still there. She dialed it from the old payphone near the kitchen, her heart pounding. It rang twice before a voice answered. Hello? She hesitated. My name is Lena. You gave me this number months ago. A pause. Then the man's calm voice. You're safe to talk? Not really, she whispered. They took my passport. They won't let me leave. The man spoke carefully. Listen, I'm with an NGO. We help women in your situation, but you need to be sure. If we act, there's no going back. Lena's breath shook. I'm already gone. I just want to live again. He gave her instructions, a time, a meeting point, a name to ask for. Nadia. Be ready, he said, and trust no one. But fate rarely moves in straight lines. 2 nights later, as Lena prepared to sneak out, everything collapsed. The manager stormed into the dressing room, waving a crumpled piece of paper. Who made this call? He shouted. Lena's heart stopped. He threw the paper on the floor, a printed phone log from the payphone. Her call had been traced. Which one of you? He barked. Who's trying to bring the police here? No one spoke. Then, to Lena's horror, Mira stepped forward. It was me. The room went silent. Mira, no, Lena whispered, but Mira cut her off with a small shake of her head. The manager's face twisted in rage. You? He grabbed her arm. You think you can betray me? He dragged her out. Lena tried to follow, but another guard held her back. From behind the closed door, she heard shouting, the crash of glass, then silence. When the door opened again, the manager's hands were stained red. Mira didn't come out. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, her body numb. Mira had saved her at the cost of her own life. The next morning, the other girls avoided her eyes. No one dared mention Mira's name. But inside Lena, something had changed forever. The fear that had once ruled her was gone. It had burned away, leaving behind something harder: determination. If Mira had believed she was worth saving, then Lena couldn't waste that sacrifice. She would finish what Mira had started. She waited for her moment. Over the next week, she acted as if nothing had happened, dancing, smiling, obeying. The manager relaxed. The guards stopped watching so closely. And then, one Friday night, the night the owner came to collect the weekly cash, Lena made her move. She slipped into the office just before closing, using the duplicate key she'd stolen weeks ago. Her hands trembled as she opened the drawer. Inside were stacks of passports, more than 20, and a small black book filled with names, payments, and dates. She grabbed hers first. Her photo faded but real, her name like a heartbeat on paper. Then she took the others, every single one, and shoved them into her bag. She was about to leave when a voice said behind her, "Going somewhere?" The manager stood in the doorway. Lena froze. He took a step closer, smiling coldly. "You think you can run? You'll end up just like Mira." But this time, Lena didn't flinch. She met his eyes and said, "Not tonight." Then she swung the metal drawer into his face. He staggered back, cursing, blood streaming from his nose. Lena ran. Outside, the air hit her like fire. Her heels slipped on the wet pavement as she sprinted through the alley, clutching the bag to her chest. Behind her, shouts echoed. The guards had seen her. She turned a corner, heart racing, lungs burning. And then, suddenly, headlights flashed. A car screeched to a stop in front of her. A woman stepped out, tall, calm, with a scarf covering her hair. "Lena?" Lena nodded, breathless. "I'm Nadia," the woman said. "Get in." As they sped away, Lena looked out the window, watching Moonlight Bar shrink behind her, the place that had stolen her freedom, her dignity, her friend. She clutched the passports in her lap. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was steady. She wasn't free yet, not fully, but for the first time, she was facing freedom, and she had Mira to thank for that. That night, as the city lights blurred into streaks, Lena whispered to herself, "This is for you, Mira. I'll make it out and I'll make them pay." The world outside was still cruel, still uncertain, but Lena had crossed the invisible line between being trapped and being unstoppable. She didn't know yet that her fight for justice was only beginning, that the stolen passports in her bag would spark a case that would shake powerful people, expose a trafficking network, and turn her from a survivor into a voice that others would follow. But for now, all she knew was this: she was alive, she was free, and she would never go back. The safe house was nothing like the bar. It was quiet. Too quiet at first. The air smelled of detergent and sunlight instead of smoke and sweat. There were no flashing lights, no drunk laughter, no commands shouted in broken accents. Just the hum of an old refrigerator and the muffled sounds of women breathing in their sleep. Lena lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid someone would burst through the door. She wasn't a prisoner anymore, but she didn't feel free either. Freedom, she realized, was not just the absence of chains, it was the absence of fear. And fear still lived in her bones, heavy and cold. The next morning, Nadia entered the small kitchen carrying a file. She was the same woman who'd helped Lena escape, composed, watchful, kind, but with eyes that had seen too much. "Good morning," Nadia said softly. "Did you sleep?" Lena nodded, though it wasn't true. Nadia placed the file on the table. "We've contacted the embassy. Your passport is being verified. But before we move forward, we need your statement, every detail. We'll use it to build a case." Lena hesitated. The thought of reliving it, The lights, the music, the hands, the shouting made her stomach twist. "I'll help," Nadia said gently. "You don't have to rush, but remember, what you say could save others." Lena looked up. "Others like me?" Nadia nodded. "There are many, and they need someone brave enough to speak first." For a long moment, Lena said nothing. Then she exhaled slowly and whispered, "Okay, I'll tell you everything." It took days. Each session felt like tearing open wounds she'd tried so hard to close. She spoke about the promises made back home, the lies, the passports, the debt, the girls who never returned. She told them about Mira, about her strength, her kindness, her death. Nadia listened silently, taking notes, recording each word. Sometimes she'd reach across the table, her hand resting briefly on Lena's trembling fingers. When it was over, Lena felt empty, but beneath the exhaustion was something fierce, like a storm building behind her ribs. They couldn't silence her anymore. A week later, the police arrived at the safe house, not with handcuffs, but with notebooks in quiet respect. One of them introduced himself as Officer Malik, a tall man with a serious face and tired eyes. "We've been tracking this network for months," he told her. "Your testimony might be the piece we were missing." Lena studied him. He wasn't like the men from the bar. His voice was steady, patient. He spoke as if her pain was real, not entertainment. When she handed him the black book she'd stolen, his expression changed. "This," he said, flipping through it, "is evidence of trafficking, money laundering, bribery, names of clients and officials. Lena, this is huge." "I don't care about huge," she said quietly. "I just want them to pay for what they did, and I want the girls who are still there to get out." Malik nodded. "We'll do everything we can, but it won't be easy. The people behind this, they're powerful." Lena met his eyes. "So was Mira, and she died trying to stop them. I won't run this time." The investigation began quietly. Lena gave more details, identified locations, and described faces. Every day brought a new question, a new memory she'd rather forget. But she didn't stop. Nadia stayed close, guiding her through meetings, making sure she had therapy, food, and rest. Sometimes they'd sit on the balcony at night, watching the city below. "Do you ever feel like you're still there?" Lena asked one evening. "All the time," Nadia admitted. "But that's why I do this, so maybe one day none of us will be." A month later, Officer Malik returned with news. "The bar's been raided," he said. "We arrested the manager and 2 guards. The owner's on the run, but we'll get him. You started something, Lena." Her heart pounded. "And the other girls? They're safe. Most of them didn't even know who to trust until now. They'll be brought here soon." Lena turned away, tears filling her eyes. For the first time in years, there were tears of relief. But peace didn't last. A week after the raid, someone followed her from the market near the safe house. She saw a man in a black jacket, the same kind the owner's bodyguards used to wear. When she turned, he was gone. That night, Nadia found her pacing the hallway, pale and trembling. "They know I talked," Lena said. "They'll come for me." Nadia's face hardened. "Then we'll protect you. You're under witness protection now. No one can touch you." But Lena wasn't convinced. The shadow of fear she'd tried to bury had returned. Days passed. The safe house felt less like a refuge and more like a cage again. Then, one morning, Malik arrived unexpectedly. "They found him," he said. "The owner. He's been hiding across the border. We've coordinated with the authorities there. He'll be extradited." Lena's breath caught. "So it's over?" Malik hesitated. "Almost. But we need you to testify in court. The case will be stronger if the victims speak. You'd be the first." Lena's instinct was to say no, to disappear, start over somewhere far away, forget everything. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Mira again, smiling, bleeding, whispering, "You can't just wait, Lena. Waiting doesn't change anything." When she opened her eyes, her fear was gone. "I'll do it," she said. The courtroom was cold. Cameras clicked, lawyers whispered, and the man who had owned her life for nearly a year sat behind the glass, expressionless. Lena stood at the witness stand, trembling at first, but her voice grew stronger with every word. She told them everything: how she was lured, how she was trapped, how Mira had died for trying to escape. She showed them the passport drawer, the black book, the bruises that had faded but never healed. When she finished, the judge's gavel struck once. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside the courtroom, Malik found her. "You were incredible," he said. "What you did took more courage than most people will ever have." "It wasn't courage," Lena replied softly. "It was grief. Courage is what comes after that." News spread quickly. Newspapers ran her story. Trafficking survivor testifies against crime ring. Social media turned her name into a symbol. People began calling her the girl who spoke. But Lena didn't want fame. She wanted change. She joined Nadia's organization, first as a volunteer, then as a counselor. She spoke to new survivors, helped them fill out forms, and held their hands through nightmares. She even visited police academies to talk about human trafficking, teaching officers what signs to look for, what to ask, and how to listen. Officer Malik attended one of those sessions once. When she finished, he approached her, smiling faintly. "You've changed a lot," he said. Lena shrugged. "No, I just remembered who I was before they tried to erase me." That night, back at the safe house, Lena sat by the window, the same one she'd once stared out of in silence. Now, she was the one others looked up to. The city lights flickered below, reflected in her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt real. She still sent money home, not just for her family, but for a small school she'd started funding in her village. When her mother called one evening, her voice trembling with pride, she said, "You're helping so many, my daughter. I wish your father could see you now." Lena smiled softly. Maybe he can. Still, every time she passed a crowded bar, every time she saw a girl standing under neon lights, she felt that familiar ache. She'd escaped her cage, but thousands still danced inside theirs. That's when she made her decision to take her story beyond the safe houses, beyond the newspapers. She would go public. She would use her name, her face, her truth, even if it meant being hunted again. Because if her voice could reach one girl who still believed she was alone, it would be worth it. Months passed, and the world began to know her name. Lena Alvarez, survivor, witness, advocate. The girl who had once been trapped behind flashing lights now stood beneath the bright lights of conference halls, classrooms, and television studios. But this time, she wasn't performing for applause. She was teaching, warning, awakening. Her first public speech took place at a local university. The auditorium was full journalists, students, professors, human rights workers. When she stepped onto the stage, the audience fell silent. For a brief moment, she froze. The lights, the murmuring crowd, the weight of eyes on her, it all took her back to the bar, to those long, terrifying nights. But then she saw Nadia in the front row, smiling gently, and her fear melted away. Lena took a breath, adjusted the microphone, and began. "I used to dance for people who never saw me. Tonight, I'm speaking to people who finally do." The room stayed silent. Every word was a tremor that rippled through the crowd. She spoke about how dreams are stolen, how freedom is sold, and how hope, fragile but fierce, can survive even in the darkest places. When she finished, there were no cheers. Just the sound of tears and a standing ovation that went on for minutes. That night, news outlets around the world picked up her story. Bar dancer turned advocate inspires change. Lena Alvarez, from victim to voice. But Lena didn't care about fame. She cared about results. She used her new platform to push for laws that would protect immigrant workers, laws that would punish traffickers, laws that would give survivors the right to rebuild their lives without shame. She met with ministers, with NGOs, with journalists. Each time she spoke, she carried Mira's memory like a flame. One afternoon, after a press conference, a woman approached her in tears. She was young, no more than 20, clutching a small child. "You don't know me," the woman said, "but I was at Moonlight Bar too. You saved me." Lena's heart stopped. How? The police came after your testimony. They took us to safety. I thought you were dead, but when I saw you on TV, she smiled through her tears. I decided to live again. Lena hugged her, the child pressed between them. You don't owe me anything, she whispered. Just make your life beautiful. That's how you win. In the months that followed, Lena's movement grew. She started a foundation, the Mira Project, named after the woman who had given her a second chance. Its mission was simple but powerful: education, rehabilitation, and empowerment for survivors of human trafficking. The foundation opened safe houses across the region, offering classes, therapy, and job training. Lena visited each one personally. She sat with the women, listened to their stories, cried with them, and laughed with them. She taught them what Mira had once taught her. Don't let the world decide who you are. But her journey wasn't without danger. Threats began arriving through anonymous emails and phone calls. Stop talking, or you'll end up like the others. Go back to where you came from. One day, after an event, she found her car window smashed, a note taped to the dashboard. You should have stayed silent. Officer Malik insisted on increasing her security. These people have lost money, reputation, power, he said. They won't forgive easily. Lena looked at the note, then tore it in half. Let them come. I've already lived through worse. Her calmness wasn't arrogance. It was liberation. She had faced death before. Nothing terrified her now. The following year, Lena received an invitation to speak at the United Nations Conference on Human Rights in Geneva. She hesitated at first. It felt too big, too far from the dusty alleys and neon lights where her story began. But Nadia reminded her, you're not going there for yourself. You're going for every girl who can't. So she went. The hall was immense, filled with diplomats, activists, and world leaders. Flags from dozens of countries lined the walls. Cameras blinked like distant stars. When Lena took the podium, she carried only a single piece of paper, Mira's name written at the top. I come from a small town, she began. I came here chasing a promise, a job that turned into a prison. For a long time, I thought I had lost everything, but what I found in that darkness was something stronger than fear, purpose. She paused, letting the silence stretch. I don't want pity. I want a partnership. I don't need sympathy. I need systems that work so no girl ever has to trade her body for survival again. Her words hung in the air like thunder. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Delegates stood. Some cried. Cameras captured the moment, but none could capture its soul. After Geneva, funding poured into the Mira Project. More shelters were built. More lives were saved. But the most important thing Lena built was something intangible: belief. The belief that survivors are not statistics, not broken stories, not forgotten names, but leaders, teachers, warriors. She began training survivors to speak publicly, to tell their stories, to lead. You're not just victims, she told them. You're educators. The world needs to learn from you. One day, years later, she returned to her homeland for the first time. The small coastal village hadn't changed much, the same narrow streets, the same smell of salt and earth. But now there was a new building near the school. A white structure with blue letters that read, Mira Center for Girls. Inside, children were painting on walls, their laughter echoing like sunlight. A teacher recognized her and called out, Miss Lena, the kids have been waiting for you. When she entered the classroom, 20 small faces turned to her. Who wants to dance? She asked playfully. Their hands shot up. As she joined them, guiding their movements, she realized she was finally free, not because she had escaped her past, but because she had transformed it. Her body still carried scars, but they no longer told a story of pain. They told a story of power. That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Lena walked along the shore. The water shimmered gold, just like it did the day she left home all those years ago. She thought of Mira, her laugh, her strength, her sacrifice. I kept my promise, Lena whispered to the wind. They didn't win. She closed her eyes and smiled a real smile, unforced and unbroken, because this time there were no lights, no music, no crowd. just her heartbeat, steady and free. And somewhere far away, in the memory of a woman who once told her to think, watch, save, plan, Lena knew that Mira was smiling too. Epilogue. Lena's story spread through classrooms and communities across the world. Her speeches became part of educational programs about human trafficking, gender rights, and resilience. Every time she stood before a crowd, whether of students, politicians, or survivors, she began with the same line. They thought I was property, but I am proof that even the most broken stories can be rewritten word by word, choice by choice, act by act. And in every audience, at least one person felt something stir the courage to fight, the strength to speak, or the hope to heal. Because that was her legacy. Not just freedom, but freedom multiplied.